There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, neither do I.
1, 2, 3, set, go!
Hello and welcome to episode 31 of the Power Chord Hour podcast. That is right, we are now in our dirty 30s, and as always, I'm your host, Anthony Merchant, not yet in my dirty 30s, but I will be there soon enough, and I am welcoming you to another episode of the Power Chord Hour podcast. Thank you so much for checking it out, and I am all here with you today. You have all of me, no guest for this one, because I wanted to talk about something. I was thinking about this, I don't know, maybe like a week or so ago, and it was perfect because, I wanted to come on here and do an episode this week, and, I was thinking about it. It is August already, and, thinking about like my favorite releases of the year, I'm like, well, geez, it's halfway over, there's still time for more releases, and obviously there's a lot more stuff coming out. But it's like time to take a step back now. And, halfway through the year, I'm like, Jesus, like how many things have come out? How many really good things have come out too? Whether it be, we have so many different things now too. There's full lengths that have been released. There's been singles that have been released. There's been covers that have been released, acoustic versions, reimagined albums. Like the Menzingers right now, I know are working on a reimagined version of Hello Exile. And, just a bunch of different things like that where it's like, there's just so many different things, coming towards us. Live albums too, lots of live albums. So, sifting through it all, I thought I wanted to do an episode just kind of talking about my favorite releases so far of 2020. I'm excited to see what the second half brings. But so far, it's been an interesting year for music too, because there's, on top of like what I just said, there's just so many different kinds of music coming out right now. But on top of that, it's like, the first like 3 months of the year, people were just kind of releasing music like normal. And that's not to say, there's been albums released since that were, obviously recorded pre-COVID. But, it's just interesting because there's artists who this whole time have had plans to put music out. It's like that they recorded this back in like, October, November of last year. And it's getting released now during quarantine. And it's like, obviously it's a weird time for it to be released. But, it's like, well, we were going to release it now anyways. Whereas there's other artists who had like no plans or no intentions of really releasing anything or doing anything, and now we've got all this different stuff. A good example of that, actually, Heath Saraceno of Midtown and Senses Fail, former guest of the show, and if you listen to last week's episode with Christian Lesperance of Jersey Interchange, Heath is working on some songs with Jersey Interchange, and I mentioned it in the interview. It's just very funny because when I talked to Heath back in March, when I talked to him and Rob Hitt about Save the World, Lose the Girl for its 20th anniversary, Heath had kind of went from not really playing guitar much, or really I think at all, he said, if I remember correctly, had not touched the guitar since those Midtown reunion shows in 2014, and then started kind of doodling around with it again, during COVID. And then from there, when I interviewed him, he was doing covers on Instagram with his buddy David, and they're still doing those. They're very cool. You should still go check them out. But now he's also doing that stuff with Jersey Interchange. So it's like, at the beginning of the year, like Heath, I don't even think was really playing guitar and had no clue that he would be like, doing these covers and then releasing stuff with Jersey Interchange. And, those are getting some neat premieres on like Brooklyn Vegan and whatnot. We premiered one on the radio show last week. And, so it's really just cool. You know what I mean? It's a very interesting year for music, when you talk about releases, because obviously with such a huge like cultural thing going on in the middle of everything, you just have a bunch of things that we probably wouldn't have otherwise. And then we also have records that, we're going to get anyways. So, just a ton of music to sift through. And, I'll give you a little rundown. I thought I would tell you what songs to check out, and I will definitely do a little Spotify playlist for this episode. So do not worry if you're listening and you're like, oh, that sounds good, and you like forget to write the band name down, or you forget the name of it or whatever. Do not fear. I will have a nice big old Spotify playlist to accompany this episode, and I'll put all the songs that I mentioned on here in there, as long as they have them. Most things are on Spotify. But, I don't know. It's insane. I never, it's not that I ever come on here and like, I'm super pro Spotify anyways. Whatever. It's a music platform. It's a way to get your music out there. But, just some of the stuff lately is just not looking good. It seems like the CEO or whatever, like someone at Spotify keeps kind of opening their mouth. And I don't know, it does not seem like anything good comes out of it. So I don't know, maybe they need to stop that. But, it's good for the show. I think it's a great thing to kind of be like, hey, remember these songs I talked about? It's like, here they are. Or, maybe you're even listening to this podcast on Spotify. But, just the way that they, don't pay artists very well, and some of the comments being made and stuff, it's just, I don't know, they need to change that shit. But I don't know, that's another episode for another day. And I don't know, it also sounds weird. It's like I'm shit talking Spotify while you might be listening to this on Spotify, and believe me, it's not lost on me. It is not lost on me. But anyway, hey, pay artists what they deserve. And, the one thing I will say that's good out of it, and then we'll get into the new music of the year, it does seem like it's cut music piracy down like a lot. And I don't know, maybe I'm totally like wrong about this, but like most people I know who used to pirate shit, like I just don't hear them talk about that anymore. It's just like it's all streaming now. And, which, once again, the other thing is like, if they're not really paying artists much, it's like, well, they're making much more than if people were pirating it. But at the same time, like, I do feel like streaming, the silver lining is streaming, even though it's not making artists, fucking money hand over fist, is I do feel like it's slowed down. I'd say slow down more than stop piracy entirely. Like I'm sure LimeWire and all that still, and I don't know, maybe I'm even like dating myself with that. I don't know if like Pirate Bay and LimeWire and stuff is like still what people use. Maybe it's like something totally different now. But I do think that streaming kind of cut that stuff down and kind of once again, maybe didn't make it extinct. Obviously, it's never going to entirely go away. If you can get a product for free, there's always going to be a audience, obviously, who is going to want that for free if it's available for free. But yeah, I think streaming kind of stopped that a little bit. So anyway, check this shit out on the Spotify playlist. But more importantly, more than that, the stuff I talk about, you should go buy the records, directly from the band's website or Bandcamp as well. Most of these releases are on Bandcamp, and like I always say, that's I think that's the best way to support artists, and artists who I talk to, I'll basically say that as well and agree with that. So, anything you can buy on Bandcamp, go buy it there. And Bandcamp's still doing that thing where they're waiving fees. I believe it's like every first Friday of the month they waive fees for artists. So that's the other thing. Maybe check this out on Spotify. Check out the songs I tell you to listen to, and if you like what you hear, go buy it off Bandcamp on one of those days where all the money goes to the artists. I'm sure they'd all appreciate it during COVID, not being able to tour. And but so getting into it, I've talked about this one. If you go back in some of the early episodes of the podcast, because this was like the first record that I heard that was new this year, but Church Girls, a band who I'd never heard from before. I believe this is their first full length, but they do have some other like EPs and stuff out. But this is the first I'd heard of them. But their new album, The Haunt, which came out back in January, and like I said, this is kind of like the first new thing that I heard in 2020, and which is always nice in the beginning of the year too, because there's not a lot of new music coming out in like January and February. March is kind of when I feel like it starts. But to have something like this come out that early and to be as good as it is too, like the thing I always say is there's really some heavy Title Fight vibes in there, and it's not to say that the band sounds straight up like Title Fight, but there's just different things. I think a lot of it might be like the guitar tones and some of the effects on it and stuff, but I kind of get like more of a kind of like a more indie rock style Title Fight. But Title Fight is always something that jumps out in my head, like ever since first hearing them. It's, and I don't know, like I said, it's not a direct comparison where they straight up sound like it. Like The Haunt doesn't sound like Shed Part 2 or anything like that. But, some of the more spaced out guitar parts, some of the effects, just some of that stuff. Like if you're a fan of that, I think you would really like Church Girls. It's really, really good. It's kind of that indie. There's a little bit of pop punk, but I wouldn't call it pop punk like traditionally, like not like, they don't sound like straight up Blink-182 or something. But there's a couple like different influences in there that just I think all mesh together kind of has a really unique sound. I really like the whole kind of ambiance of it too. There really is kind of one on the record it's kind of gloomy in a way, I would say, but in a good way. I mean, it's not a bad thing at all. It's a good gloominess or sadness that kind of is like the ambiance or the vibe that you get on The Haunt. But I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. First record of the year that I really listened to and has stuck with me. I mean, I still like it just as much as when it came out. And I know we played some stuff, or we played at least a song off of it on like our first January, well, only one January rundown, but our first like rundown episode. And yeah, so if you've not checked this out yet, this one under your radar, or you missed it for whatever reason, I would say the 3 songs to check out could have been The Haunt and Nothing. Those are probably my 3 favorite, and just have a really good energy to them. There's like an urgency to those songs, as well as the drums too. I got to give a shout out to their drummer. There's just some really cool, like really rhythmic things he does in there that just not like a generic like 4/4 rock beat. Like, does some really cool stuff rhythmically in there, and I don't know, I'm impressed. I really can't say enough good things. Check them out. I love that record, Church Girls, The Haunt, and I still think that's going to go down as one of my favorites of 2020. And speaking of one of my favorites, this is in my top 3 favorite of the year. I've talked a bunch about it. I had Jason on the show, but I'm talking about Suicide Machine's Revolution Spring. That one came out back in March on Fat Records, and first one to come out on Fat. And it's kind of surprising it took this long for them to be on there. I mean, to me, like, you listen to Suicide Machines and like, you almost like I thought about that when it came out on Fat. I started thinking about it. I'm like, how is this the first thing? Like, you start looking back at their release and you're like, all these records, like their whole career, they could have been on Fat Records, and they always kind of seemed like a Fat Man. And I also think they toured with a lot of them, and I think I've always been pretty close knit to them. But yeah, I mean, what would that be, like 30 years into their career, and finally working with Fat. But it came out, what we got was amazing. I mean, this record, I'm putting it up there with their first 2. I mean, I love all their albums. I can pick, they're one of those bands though where it's like first 2 records, love them front to back, and then after that it's like I can kind of pick and choose songs. And I really like the self-titled record. I gotta say, I know it's a polarizing one. I know Jason himself, I don't even think is a very big fan of it, but I mean, I like that record. I know it's different, but some of the later ones, it's like I'm kind of like, I like them, but I'm kind of more like, if I put it on, it's like, all right, I might listen to this song, then I'll skip that one, then I'll listen to this one, then I'll skip the next one. And it's kind of like that. Now with Revolution Spring, not at all. I mean, this thing front to back, and I mean the quality of it. Like I said, I mean their first 2 records are ska punk classics. I mean, basically, I would say if Operation Ivy didn't exist, I would probably say the Suicide Machine's like my all-time favorite ska punk band. I mean, I guess you really got to give that to Op Ivy, in my opinion. But I mean, as far as ska punk goes, Suicide Machines have always been some of the best to do it. And first 2 records, man, I think are like, really kind of like bands who do that even to this day. It's like that's your kind of that's the how-to, that's your guide to kind of how to write like the perfect ska punk songs and ska punk record. And kind of also like with the influences, not make it all straight up just sound like one thing. I mean, there's some reggae in there and just some straight up, just reggae songs. There's a little dub in there. There are just straight up fast punk songs. There's hardcore songs in there. And they kind of did that again, I feel like, on Revolution Spring. Because there are a few records where, like, what I think they did best early on was exactly what I'm talking about. There's a variety in there. You know what I mean? Like, you hear the different influences and the different spectrums, because it's like ska is such a wide like thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's the Suicide Machines are ska, and so are, I mean, there's elements of ska in like not even elements of ska. I would say they're a ska band, but like Squirrel Nut Zippers or something like that, where it's like, or like the swing bands, who have the horns and, play things on the upbeat and whatnot. Like, there's different spectrums of it where it's like there's all, they all kind of are influenced by the same, like older bands and stuff, but obviously the outcomes differently. But that's what I like about Suicide Machines, is including on the early records, they kind of showed all those different, spectrums of ska and ska punk and whatnot in it. And with some of the later ones they would do, it would be more like, on the side of like straight up hardcore punk, Or, you have the self-titled one, which is more, kind of like a pop rock record, like totally left field for them. And Revolution Spring kind of sees them back at that, where it's like they're good at doing ska punk. They're good at kind of exploring different avenues of it. And one of their best records, one of my favorite records of the year, but I mean one of their best records. I listen to it constantly. And I would say the 3 songs to go check out on that one: Trapped in a Bomb, which one of my favorite Suicide Machine songs, period. It kind of has a Green Day vibe, in my opinion, which there's a few songs actually on this record. I never really got to ask Jason about it, but I kind of got like old school Green Day out of it, like influence out of it. Kind of like, and I'm talking like Lookout Records and like Dookie era Green Day. I mean, it's not like they sound, I don't think Jason was sitting around listening to like, Revolution Radio, like recording this, but I mean like really old Green Day. I could hear on this record. Same with like some Bouncing Souls. There's a couple songs, or there is one song, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but I'm like, and it sounds like a Suicide Machine song. It doesn't sound like they're ripping off the Bouncing Souls, but it does sound like a song I could hear like the Bouncing Souls cover, and I think would just fit perfectly. But yeah, on that record, you got to check out the whole thing, but check out Trapped in a Bomb, Bully in Blue, which I mean, and they put this out way earlier in the year, but I mean, I feel like that song's extremely fitting for 2020 and probably become even more relevant since the record came out in March. And also Detroit is the New Miami. And that's the other thing with them too, is I feel like they're a band, Jason gets political on there. He speaks his mind. And what I always like about him is he really truly means what he's singing and what he's writing about. Like, not like a very, we're going to get pseudo political or like vaguely political, because I don't care if a band does, but like my thing is this: it's like, if you're going to do it, like go all in. Like sometimes people do it and I'm cynical about it, because I'm like, well, I feel like you're like dipping your toe in something that you don't know much about, because it's like, it will get you attention, or, like something like that. I'm cynical in those ways, but like with Jason, what I love about it, you listen to Suicide Machines and you're like, oh no, like he's like, I mean, one of the songs on the record, addresses like, and Suicide Machines are obviously a Detroit band, and he's talking about, the whole Flint water crisis. And, I mean, really, I don't think I've ever heard another band sing about that. I mean, obviously it's very close to home as well, but it's like, he means it. You know what I mean? It's not a thing of like, oh, we could sing about this current event thing. It's like he means the anger in his voice, and, he means everything he's singing. And I think that's why this record is just so damn good. It took them, I mean, this is the first new record of theirs in like 11 years, but to me it was worth it. I mean, if this is what we get for waiting 11 years, if we got to wait another 11 years for another one, I will wait, because I'm totally cool with that. I think we need another Suicide Machines record that sounded like this one. And if you are a fan of them, go check out that interview with him back in March. It was one of our earlier episodes, probably like episode, I think like 16 maybe. But yeah, I love talking to him, and it was a blast, and it was a treat too. I mean, it was like, because I love that record and I was listening to it a ton, and I still am, but it was so fun like as it came out, and I'm like digging into it, and then I got to interview him, and he's such a nice dude, and they're one of the best live bands too. If you've never seen them live, look up the Suicide Machines. He has so much energy. Like, you want to talk about a good front man, including someone who utilizes just being a singer. Like, he doesn't have a guitar when he's playing he does in some of his other bands, but in Suicide Machines, it's just him singing. And it's like he takes advantage of that. He's running around like a madman. He's jumping into the crowd, sharing the mic with the audience, like all that kind of stuff. Someone who really takes advantage of that, and I always like that, because sometimes it's awkward if if an artist is up there just singing, like more like in a punk band. Obviously not if you're like in a like slow, kind of more like slow tempo band or doing something slower like that. But like in like faster punk bands, if you're up there with just the mic and you're not moving around, I feel like that looks more weird. Like, you got to be wild, like you got to get crazy, and that's exactly what Jason does. Just such a great live band. Doesn't matter who else is in the band. But actually, it's funny, I even think of this, but segueing into the next one, speaking of Suicide Machines, while he has not been in the band for quite a while, though he did do a reunion tour with them 5 years ago, but the OG on the first 2 Suicide Machines records, Derek Grant, I mean, one of the best punk drummers out there, and while he was not on that new Suicide Machines, he was on the new Alkaline Trio EP, which came out back in March as well. And I loved it. It really was it was like half a surprise release. Like people knew it was coming out, but then it got pushed forward because it was done before COVID. But then the whole Bad Religion Alkaline Trio co-headliner, which was like my most anticipated tour of the year, like that was going to be a sick tour, and hopefully that gets rescheduled. Whenever shows come back, like next year. But they did that. This was like early on in COVID. I'd say like maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, they released the EP. And a whole lot earlier than people thought it was going to come out, and I was very happy with it. I loved it. It's we don't get a ton now. With Matt being in Blink-182, that takes up a lot of his time. We don't get tons of Alkaline Trio. That had been super long. I mean, as this thing Cursed came out in 2018. But I mean, before that, though, we had waited 5 years. My Shame Is True came out in 2013. So we were waiting a while in between that. But this EP was really, really good. I mean, including if it's a taste of something to come, not that they've teased a full length. I know they did this for that tour. So, it was kind of a one-off thing. It's not, there's no hints at it. There's been no talks about it. But the direction that they did take on the 3 songs, I mean, I think on a new record would sound really, really good. I think they took advantage of that too. For only being a 3-song EP, there's really some range here. There's some neat stuff on there. Some of it just sounds straight up like Alkaline Trio. Others of it sounds a little experimental. Nothing super left field for them, but still different enough where, they kind of took a chance, and I think it worked out. And just great to hear the 3 of them. I've said it quite a few times. Blink-182 is one of my all-time favorite bands for sure. But, the last couple records with Matt, while, I don't think they sound – I've never seen them live. But the videos I've seen, I don't think they sound bad live with him. I don't think he does a bad job on Tom's songs. But, the new stuff, I just really cannot get into it. I like a couple songs off California. And outside of that, I just don't really like what is, what they've done, which is funny. I love Alkaline Trio and I love Blink-182, but when you put them together, it does not work. It does not work in my opinion. Some people would disagree. I think other people would also agree, though. I also don't think that I'm like having a hot take here, saying that I'm not a big fan of post-Tom Blink-182. But, what I am saying, though, is even though I'm not a fan of that, I'm happy that we're still getting Alkaline Trio, even if it is, not another full length right now. What they are putting out is really good. And so is this thing Cursed. I mean, that thing was a solid album. And, that was in the middle of it all. That was 2 years after Blink-182's California. And I don't know, I guess timeline-wise, maybe they were working on 9 at that point. I'm not entirely sure. But, it's just good to see when he goes back and does that. I feel like in Blink-182, his songwriting is held back. Matt Skiba is obviously, an amazing songwriter. Like, you listen to like his lyrics and just some of the stuff in Alkaline Trio, I'm just like, holy shit, like that line is just so good. He's just very, very clever. And, he got some good stuff in here. There's one Matt song and then 2 Danny songs. And Dan, though, does steal it. I would say the best track on the EP, there's only 3 of them, so, go check out the whole goddamn thing. But Smokestack just steals it. It is a really good Danny song. I like his acoustic songs, except for Enjoy Your Day. And I'll keep that for another episode because I could probably do a whole episode on it. But that song fucks up the flow of God Damn It. Entirely, and that's probably why I dislike the song. If I heard it in another context, maybe if it was placed in another place on the record, I may like it more. But I do not like that song at all. But besides that one, any time that it's like a stripped back song with Danny, it's like I think those are like the best songs. Like This Addiction has like one of my favorite Alkaline Trio closers on it with Fine. That one has, which I guess there is some electric guitars in it, but it is stripped back, I would still say, for Alkaline Trio. And, and actually it's funny I say that because there is a deluxe edition of This Addiction that I got when it came out, and there's an acoustic version of Fine on there, which doesn't sound all that different, just doesn't have drums and just really doesn't have that lead guitar over it, but it doesn't sound that terribly different. But yeah, like Acoustic Danny songs, I'm normally a fool for, and Smokestack's one of his best ones. I love it, and that, like, I feel like his songwriting too is just really, really good on here. Like, I can't wait for another Alkaline Trio release, whenever that is. Who knows when that's going to be? But at least we have this EP to hold us over. I really, really do enjoy it. And Archer's a Loaf, while they did not release a new album this year, and I don't know if they're gonna. I mean, I feel like it's like easing up to that. It wasn't originally, but now it's like I feel like slowly getting there. But they have put 2 7-inches out this year and have put out 4 different songs. And I mean, we're talking about a band here who hasn't released anything since, like, I believe the year 2000 was the last time they recorded music. So it's been about 2 decades, and they did not disappoint at all. I mean, the very first song, Raleigh Days, which they released earlier this year in like January or February, was just amazing. It has a classic. It just has that classic, like it could have been on Icky Metal. It really could have. And like not, it wasn't like really too like, you know, not like weird experimental or like going in some odd direction or anything. Like, they came back with just straight up just a classic Archer's a Loaf song. And you never know with a band, you know what I mean? Including one who has not released anything in 20 years. It's like the outcome may not be good. You know, it's not always getting back in the studio together after 2 decades. It's not always magic. Sometimes it is. You obviously always hope it is, but it's not always magic. Where thankfully with Archer's a Loaf, no, they got in there and they did not lose a beat. Not at all. I mean, this is perfect. They like picked up right where they left off, and I love it. They have 2 7-inches out there, or like I guess you could say like digital EPs, if you will. But you should go check them both out. But I mean, the 4 songs that are out, and I'll have these on the playlist. There's only 4 of them, so I'll throw them all on there because they're all so good too. But Raleigh Days, that's the first one they put out. I love it. And Cruel Reminder, Talking Over Talk, and their cover of the Rolling Stones' Street Fighting Man. All of those are solid. The Raleigh Days and the Street Fighting Man did get, I believe, a Record Store Day release. But to be honest, I don't know what Record Store Day was like this year. I don't know if those got released. I guess they might have gotten released online. I totally forgot about that too. I just don't collect vinyl like I used to, so I didn't pay as much attention to Record Store Day this year. And then obviously with everything going on, part of me assumed that they didn't do it, but then I'm thinking about it more, and I'm like, no, they may have. And yeah, if they did, I believe that was getting released for Record Store Day. So maybe it's out there as a Record Store Day release, maybe not. But yeah, I mean, Archer's a Loaf is a band that, while I only discovered them back in 2014, but I mean, Web in Front is just, I'm far from the first person to say that's like the greatest indie rock love song of all time. But like, I literally still remember the first time hearing that song 6 years ago. Like, I remember the day. I remember listening to it like on a loop afterwards, like, and then just listening to all the other stuff too, like that day, and being like, how have I never, like, why is this the first time listening to them? And shout out to Andy Jackson of Hot Rod Circuit. I had actually started listening to them because in old interviews he was talking about how they were like the biggest influence on Hot Rod Circuit. Like, he made it a point, and not in one interview, like multiple interviews, he made it a point to talk about, like, yeah, this band is like the greatest band of all time and is the reason we're a band. And you can hear it in the early, including like early Hot Rod Circuit, like the first 2 albums, like basically anything pre Sorry About Tomorrow is they're like a more pop punk version of Archer's a Loaf. I mean, you hear it all over there, as well as Superchunk too. But I'm so thankful that he championed them so much, because I discovered them. And an amazing, amazing band, one of the best ones out there. I mean, I've said it too before. It's like I feel like they deserve the credit that a lot of like indie rock bands of the 90s get that they don't. Like Pavement is one. Like, to be honest, I'm not a fan of Pavement, and I think part of it is I heard Pavement after I heard Archer's a Loaf, and I'm just like, what's everyone talking? Like, have none of you ever heard Archer's a Loaf before? Like that like, I'm sorry, that was my reaction when I first heard Pavement. I'm just like, people who like this must have just never heard Archer's a Loaf before. I've had that reaction for a few bands where, like, you listen to it, you're just like, oh, like, people have heard that, like someone went into a record store And instead of picking up Icky Metal that day, they picked up whatever the biggest like Pavement record is. Like, I don't know what it would be, but like they picked that up instead of Icky Metal, and it's that kind of thing. But I'm like, you know, I just can't believe Archers of the Loaf don't have like that level of you know, like significance. Or the Pixies too. I mean, the Pixies are another one where I'm like, and I know they kind of bleed into the 80s as well, but I'm like, you know, if we're talking like indie rock, and I mean just those sound dynamics of like the soft verse, the loud chorus, and just playing with dynamics like that, I mean, Archers of the Loaf are right up there with all those bands, and I wish got the notoriety that all those bands that I mentioned did, because I don't know, in my opinion, much talented than them. Though I'm not trying to talk shit on. I guess I am. I'm lying to you. I'm kind of talking a little indie rock shit here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. But that is I don't know. I'm trying to start a beef. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to start a beef with Frank Black. That's what I'm trying to do right now. I think that's the guy's name from the Pixies, that band that Archers of the Loaf should be as big as. But whatever. I'm going down a road that we will no longer go down. And another one you got to go check out. This one came out back in May, and it is Murder for Girls, Done in the Dark. I love this album. It is, and I will say too, I mean, full disclosure, I'm buddies with that band, but you can remove that out of it. It's a good record, and I would definitely be a fan of the album as well as the band just in general if I didn't know them. But it is nice to know that they are just such good people in there. And I like what they do. They're very, like, I know their influences, like, you know, including shout out Tammy. I mean, the coolest person I know in Pittsburgh. We'll give a little shout out to Tammy there. Raddest person in all Pittsburgh. And I know her influences because we both like the same shit. But, you know, what I like about the band is I know what the influences are, and they use them, but they do something very unique. Like, they don't sound like one our mutual, actually, how we even became friends. We met each other at Tommy Stinson house show in Pittsburgh. But like, I know the Replacements are like one of her favorite bands, if not her favorite band. And, you know, I mean, I know that influence is in there, but they don't sound like straight up the Replacements or anything like that. You know, they don't sound like straight up like any of their influences. They never go down one road too far where like they're just ripping off a band. And I think extremely unique. And I also, the bass lines on this too are always, not even just on this, on all their releases. They have 2 other EPs besides this new full length that you got to go check out as well, and they're definitely on Bandcamp. So go grab all these on Bandcamp from them. They are good people from up in Pittsburgh, and this one's very cool. Speaking of the Replacements, this was produced by Tommy Stinson. I know this was huge for Tammy and the rest of them. I know the rest of them are Matt's fans, but none of them are as big of Replacements fans as Tammy, and I know that was huge for her. Recording with him, it was very rad. I remember when she told me, and it was still kind of, I think they were keeping it secret at the time, but it was very, very cool. I was so happy and proud for her when she like told me, oh yeah, like we get to record and you know, be produced by Tommy, and he did a damn great job. I'm getting tongue tied here. He did a damn great job on the production on this. He did what I like what a producer does, where he made him sound, he made it sound good, you know, it's pleasing to listen to, but he didn't really take the edge away from them. You know what I mean? Like what they had on their earlier releases, like he didn't take that away. He just made better what they already did well, and he also just made it sonically sound better. But like, you know, he didn't go in there and change the band, you know, like entirely and make them something that they're not or anything like that, you know. And I always like that when a producer does that, because a producer can definitely go in and overstep their boundaries. But Tommy didn't do that. Tommy had a nice touch to everything, but it is still very much a Murder for Girls release, which I like because I love all their releases. And I'm still bummed, actually. While they're buddies, I've never gotten to see them live. They opened up for Bash and Pop, Tommy Stinson's band. Last time he played Pittsburgh, like 3 years ago. And it was funny. It was the same. It wasn't even the weekend at that point. The show was like a Tuesday. But that was in Pittsburgh at the Fun House at Mr. Smalls there. Great venue. Both rooms, Mr. Smalls itself as well as the Funhouse at Mr. Small's, which I also have to say, I think I brought this up a few episodes back, but the Funhouse at Mr. Small's, I saw HR from Bad Brains there actually a few months after this Bash and Pop show that I'm talking about. And I have to say, and this is a small venue, this venue holds like 300 people, if that. And I got to say, I've never been to a concert that smelled stronger than weed. And yes, I know we're in a small room, but there was power in numbers. Like, it smelled so strong weed, not because it was like one person smoking a lot of weed in a small room. It's because half the audience was smoking weed. And that is, I don't know. I always think of that when I think of that show. I mean, HR was great. Don't get me wrong. Great show. Living legend there. But I'll never forget. I don't think I've ever been to a show that smelled more like weed. That and Bob Dylan. But see, that's the thing with you got to give HR. Bob Dylan was in an arena, and it only smelled like it when you were in the parts where basically there weren't security guards or they weren't looking, because the security guards there, not only were they dickheads, but they were also stupid. And I'll comfortably say that. And we're getting into, I won't shit talk that anymore, but yeah, I had a bad experience with the security there. They were assholes, not for smoking weed though, but the people in the back though, I'm surprised weren't getting caught. 'Cause there were some sections in there where I'm like, damn, this like for the shit that they're yelling at people for, I can't believe no one in here is getting in trouble. But anyway, getting back to Murder for Girls, I was bummed. It was that weekend was Riot Fest 2017, so I was in Chicago, and I drove from Chicago to Pittsburgh, and I forgot about that damn literally 1 hour time change, and I was about an hour late, and had just missed their set, just off that. I mean, had I left an hour earlier, I'd have been fine. I didn't know it. I was dicking around with my buddy. And yeah, so I missed them the one time, and now we have quarantine. But hopefully, once it's over, I get to go see Murder for Girls live, because from all the videos I've seen, they always sound great, and their records are really, really good. And they're probably new to you. I mean, I do play them on the radio show quite a bit, and I try to get the word out there on them. But they are a smaller band from Pittsburgh, a local band from there. So if you want to go support them, like I said, they're on Bandcamp. And if you haven't heard them yet, their whole discography's there. But start out with their new record, Done in the Dark, one of my favorites of this year. And go check out their songs, Exposure and Broken. And shout out to Tammy and Tommy. Shout out to Tommy Stinson for doing a great job producing this. And it just made me happy. Like I know that it made her stoked to work with him. So I was like, oh, that's rad. Like to know what it meant to her. You know what I mean? Very, very cool. I know I would lose my shit if I was working with Tommy Stinson. I don't think I could keep my cool with that at all. But Scott Sellers of Rufio, we're getting into some pop punk now. Last month in July, he's been putting out a bunch of different things this year. But this I feel like is a real highlight. It is called Influence, and it is a album of basically his influences. And guess what? It is all 90s skate punk. I absolutely love it. I mean, if you're a fan of Rufio, you're gonna like this. It just sounds like Rufio covering, all the pop punk bands that came before them. Basically, it sounds amazing. I mean, it really does. Scott did a really good job on all of these. And he picked some songs, too, that were not easy, that really showcase his guitar playing and everything. And he records everything on it. He self-produces it, records it, plays everything. The only thing he doesn't play is the drum machine, which I assume he programs. So, I mean, this is all just coming from Scott. And he did an amazing job. I mean, production sounds great, and I'm assuming this was all done in a home studio as well. The way he's been releasing not just this, but acoustic songs. He's been doing originals. This is all on his Bandcamp too. It's another great one to go check out, scottsellers.bandcamp.com. But yeah, and actually maybe too, I'll do a little master list when I'm done with this podcast. I'll go look up like all the artists that I'm telling you about. And if their stuff is on Bandcamp, I will put the links in the show notes for this week. So, if you like anything, you can just jump on down there and go grab it. And this one in particular, I actually believe is Pay What You Want, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, it's funny too, because when you listen to it, it's like you see where Rufio like got all their influences. Like, absolutely. Like, you're listening and you're like, oh yeah, like including the first song on the album that opens it up, and one that I would highly recommend, and I'll throw on our playlist. But the exhumation of Virginia Madison is just like, I mean, because Strung Out is one of those punk bands who can actually play their instruments, and I talked about that with Joey Cobra a couple episodes ago. We were talking about his influences, and kind of that funny thing where like so many punk bands, the joke is they really can't play their instruments, and then it's like you have these certain bands like Lagwagon or Strung Out or later on Rufio, where like, oh no, like those guys like also like and Propagandi's another one too, where it's like those guys are also like metalheads and actually know how to play their instruments. You know what I mean? Like they actually know what they're doing. Even their I can't remember her name, but and I say new guitarist of Propagandi though. She's been in the band now for I think like 7 or 8 years. But like I think she was like a guitar teacher before being in the band, and like knows music theory, and like is like a technical player. You know what I mean? Not like just grabbing someone. They're not a band who could just go grab someone off the street. It's like, yeah, like over the weekend, listen to our albums and play along to them, and you'll figure it out, like the 4 chords that we keep playing in different variations. It's like, it's not like that at all. Like you actually need someone who knows their scales and knows a little bit of theory and stuff. And yeah, so really cool. No Propaganda on this, but that Strung Out cover, one of the best ones. And you listen to that and you're like, oh yeah, like you totally see where Rufio was coming from and everything. But it's very cool. It's a great highlight of 90s pop punk, skate punk, and kind of inadvertently too, just because the band's, given the labels they're on, is also kind of a love letter, I would say, to Fat Records and Epitaph, because I'd say just about every band on here is on one of those labels. If they weren't an Epitaph band, they were a Fat band, or they were both. But yeah, a really great one. So go check that out. The exhumation of Virginia Madison, and also A New Hope, the Blink-182 cover, really, really good. I like the choice too. I mean, like, just because it's so, like, that's a Blink-182 song that even I forget about sometimes. Dude Ranch is my favorite Blink-182 record, but like even I kind of forget A New Hope as a standalone song. And I like that he kind of went that way and didn't just cover like Damn It, or something that you would guess someone normally, or even like M&M's or Carousel or something like that. Like I'm happy you went with something where you're like, oh, like that's a deep cut. Like I would definitely say A New Hope is a Blink-182 deep cut, and he does it justice. It sounds amazing. I mean, it sounds like Rufio doing Blink-182, and if that is your thing, go check it out. It is on Scott Sellers' Bandcamp. And yeah, go check out everything else he's been putting out this year, and late last year too. He's been on a roll now for about like, I don't know, last like 8 or 9 months. It's been insane, the output of music that he's been putting out, to the point where I did an interview with Joey Cobra a few weeks ago, where we were talking about Joey Cobra's music, yet went into a whole thing about how much music Scott Sellers has been putting out. That's how much music Scott Sellers puts out, that other people's interviews become interviews about Scott Sellers. So I would say definitely worth checking out. And speaking of good pop punk music, I gotta tell you, I mean, I did not think, I'll just be completely honest, did not think I was gonna like this record. I will say that right off the bat. They proved me wrong, and I'm so happy they did, because no matter what, I would still put them as one of the best pop punk bands out there. And a lot of their albums are some of my favorite pop punk records of all time. Not the last few, but quite a few of them. But it is Newfound Glory with Forever and Ever times Infinity. This one came out back in June, and it kept getting pushed back. I kind of felt bad for them. I think it was supposed to be released in like, I think March or April. I know it got leaked early, and then COVID happened. Then it was like they didn't know what was going on, if things were open or not, so it got pushed back to a summer release. And but I gotta say, it was well worth the wait. And like I was saying, I'll be completely honest, I did not expect to like it. I love Newfound Glory, but the last couple records just have not been their best. Resurrection has a couple good songs on it, but Makes Me Sick I could not get behind. And even Resurrection, the songs that I like, my biggest gripe is still that whole one guitar thing. Like, I totally get it. You didn't, once Steve was out of the band, I'm not even saying you had to add another member as like a permanent member or anything like that. But it's like Chad could just record like literally just record another guitar track in the studio. Like, I listen and look at it's a small gripe, I get it, but like on a song like Ready and Willing, which is a great song off Resurrection, but you can hear the empty spots where there should be chugging guitar. Like it just didn't work. Like what they would do, the producer of that record, and actually I think they might have self-produced the album too, which may have been one of the other issues. Self-producing can be a good, I was actually just listening to it. Jim Atkins of Jimmy Eat World just started doing a cool podcast, and he just put out his first episode with Mark Hoppus. And I really like it because both of them do studio stuff and do like production. Mark famously, he doesn't so much now. I think he does some more like songwriting collaborations, but really there was a time there from like 2007 to like 2012 or so. I'd say like 4 or 5 years where Mark was producing tons and tons of records in the scene. And actually one of them, funny enough, was Newfound Glory's Not Without a Fight, which I thought he did a great job on. That's a great Newfound Glory record. But anyways, Jim and Mark were talking about it, how just because you are a musician or a good musician or just a musician in a successful band does not automatically mean that you're going to be a good engineer or producer. And I like that they talked about this because I've talked about this a few times on here, like with Michael Beinhorn, who is a famous producer, did a bunch of like all the big 90s rock records, as well as Steve Kravick, who once again, funny enough, I mean, talking about connecting the dots everywhere, which is also a Newfound Glory song. But Steve Kravick, who worked with Blink-182. And, talking to Steve about it and Michael and a couple other people over the years, it's like, I'm totally like, I love it too. Don't get me wrong. I have tons of people on here you hear me interview who are doing home recordings, including now during quarantine, recording albums off iPads. I mean, just all these different things. I think it's awesome that you can do that now. I think it's a great thing. I use that stuff personally for demoing things at home. But what I will say is I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the other thing, too, is if you, including budget-wise, like if you just don't have a budget and that's the way to get out a record, it's great that you can do that. But what I will say, including for bands who probably could have a producer who decide to self-produce it, my thing is like, if it's not a money issue, if it's not a thing where it's like, look, we just don't have the funds for a producer, I just don't think self-producing is always the best bet. You know what I mean? Like, it is if you know what you're doing, but being a producer is more than just hitting record. You know what I mean? Like, it really is. There's also a psychological aspect where you have to get 4 people on the same page. You also have to realize, you have to figure out how to get them, not manipulate them, but you have to figure out how to get them to work their best way, how to get the best out of them. And, that's something... Like, that's something a producer does, which I think is also, like, when you talk about self-producing, it's probably hard for members to be like, there's certain things that a producer does where members of a band, they self-produce and start getting that critical with one another, might break up. Like, it's probably easier to say fuck you to your bandmate when he tells you, like, that bass line is like, you should add something to it, or, your singing's flat, or, this drum beat, slow the tempo down, or like something like that. Like, a producer kind of steps in and does things with that you just doing it with the band and just the band members kind of bickering between one another, which once again, it isn't always this way. Self-producing doesn't always happen that way, but I think a lot of times it's not good and it can be disastrous. And I don't know. I think that might have been part of Resurrection. I could totally be wrong, but if I remember correctly, they did self-produce that. And I just think if they had someone in there, it's kind of like, look, you don't need to add a 5th member. Like, you don't need to replace Steve, but it's like, just play another guitar in studio. Like, literally just play a rhythm guitar. Like, I don't get it. And then it's like they added it on this one, on Forever and Ever. And, like, there it is again. There's that classic Newfound Glory sound that we all know and love. Like musically just killed it on this. Like, I love it. Like, the energy on this record puts bands half their age to shame. Like, I mean, a band this far in now, 20-something years as a band, like, they're still really like that's what I love about this record, because like I said, did not expect to like it. So like when I listened to it, I'm like, wow. Like, for one, it's a great summertime record. Like, the one good thing about it getting pushed back to June was that it's a really good sunny day album. So I don't think it came out at a bad time at all. I think that was kind of a like perfect time for it to come out. It really, on my trip down south, like driving down there, this was on constantly. I listened to this album a bunch. It's just perfect for a sunny day with the windows down and just listening to it, including now. Like if you're stuck inside with everything, you're quarantined or whatever, and you can't go outside or enjoy shit, it's like put this on. Remember what it was like when, you know, we still had like music festivals and you were driving with your windows down with your friends to a to like a fest somewhere. Like remember those days with it. But just they really did a great job on this one. Like they really did. Best stuff they've put out in a long time, and just a great pop punk record. You know, this is one of those bands where, you know, they've experimented throughout the years. And you have albums like Coming Home, and obviously sometimes they do things that are a little more. You know, there's been albums where they put more hardcore into it than they do other records. You know, ones that are more straight up pop punk. You have like Radio Surgery, which is like pop punk, but also like kind of pop rock, and I would even dare say a little Ramones core in there. Not a straight up Ramones core band, but you definitely hear some of that Ramones influence in there. And and I like when they go do different things, but it's like also when they just put out one of those albums where it's like we're just a fast pop punk band who like also likes hardcore. Like that's just when they're their best, and that's what they did on this one. They just went in and did what you expect out of New Found Glory. You know, nothing here that gets you left field. This is New Found Glory. Like, this is a New Found Glory record, and it's goddamn good. And I'm so happy I can say that. Because, once again, it's tough love. Just, you know, I don't like the last few records, just like I don't like the last few Blink-182 records. But these are bands that I put up as some of my favorites of all time, and some of their albums are my all-time favorites. So it's like, you know, it's shit talking with love. That's exactly what it is, because I want to like their albums. Like, trust me, I would love if I loved everything that Blink-182 was doing with Matt Skiba and John Feldman. I wish I loved it. I wish I went, goddamn, this is better than it was with Tom DeLonge. Like, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great if all of a sudden it was like, oh, this band, like, we all thought like it was going to fall apart, but this band is even better now. Like, I wish it was like that, but, you know, it's not. It's not always like that. In this case, it's not. But you know, with New Found Glory, they turn shit around, and I love it. I'm excited for the future for them, and I'm excited to go see them live again too. It's like I want to hear these songs live. You know, that's another sign of a good record when you're like, I actually want to hear new stuff live. You know, it's like, I don't want to just hear old stuff. It's like, let me hear this stuff. But some of the best songs on it to go check out: Stay a While. That is a just classic pop punk song. Himalaya, that one might have like some of the most energy on the record. That might be the most energetic song. And Chad really too, and I gotta give him that, really, really good guitar player with some really great riffs. Like you start looking back throughout the years, and he's written some really, really good riffs. He's actually a very underrated guitar player, I would say. Like I Never Existed is another really good one. And yeah, those three there. I mean, the whole record's really good, I gotta say. And actually the closer on it, Slipping Away, is probably my favorite song on it. But I feel like that one fits better in context, because it's actually kind of a, I don't know if I want to say ballad, but it's kind of ballady for New Found Glory. And it's kind of more of a kind of sad-ish ending, but it's like, it's really good. And as far as like mature, like the mature side of New Found Glory is really good. It kind of catches you at the end. Like, it's a great album closer, one of their best album closers, if I'm being honest, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it works really well in the context of the record. But I wanted to like show you the faster side of it, the more energetic side. So I would definitely say those three songs. But check out the whole damn thing. Really, really good. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, just a few episodes back, if you haven't heard it yet, go check it out. He was in studio here. I'm looking right now at the seat he was sitting in about 3 weeks ago. But I did talk to Joey Cobra, local musician here in Jamestown, and he put out his new EP, Fever Dream. And funny enough, he just put out another one. I am sorry, I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head. He literally put it out like a day ago. Since me recording this, he put it out about, I don't know, maybe a day or two, maybe a few since this podcast came out. But that is also on his Bandcamp. But Fever Dream, just so good. I mean, it goes back to basically with the last two, Newfound Glory and Scott Sellers. And something that I'm just a fool for, and a reason why all three of these are on here, is I just love a good pop punk record. Like, at the end of the day, all the music that I love, pop punk's my favorite genre. Like, I mean, most of my favorite bands fall in that. You know what I mean? Like I can go forever and tell you my love of the Replacements and Arches of Loaf and Superchunk and just all the college rock and indie rock and alternative, and I love all that stuff too. But I would say I grew up on pop punk. I still listen to tons and tons of it, and I'm also, though, with that, I'm also now a 27-year-old, curmudgeon, and anything that just comes out that is pop punk does not mean it's good, and I don't love everything that comes out that's pop punk. So when bands put out stuff in that genre that I just think is just really, really good, like, I want to highlight it, and including in this area, it was a big thing me and Joey talked about. We really don't have punk or pop punk bands in the Jamestown area, so to have someone here doing something that I love and doing something that I play on the show, being able to highlight that here is a absolute treat. I mean, he wears his influences on his sleeve. I mean, you listen to this and you'll be like, oh yeah, like this guy listens to NoFX and Lagwagon and like early Blink-182 and I mean, just any of them, any of the greats, any of the great punk rock bands Joey listens to, and you hear it in his music. And I think he did a great job with this. This is another one where I just great too. Just he did this himself as a solo effort, but it was just him. He recorded everything on an iPad, and he did it. He programmed the drums, and I give him credit. This is like what I was talking about earlier with like the self-producing, and when I think it works. Like I think it worked for Joey because, like he'll tell you, it's like this was kind of a thing for quarantine. It kind of came up last minute, and it's awesome he could do that himself. And he'd been practicing a little bit, I guess, recording with the iPad and stuff. And I think it sounds great, including being recorded on that. I mean, it's a testament to what you can do with very little now. But he ended up on an iPad, wrote like some of the best skate punk that you're going to hear all year, and some of the best you've probably heard in a while. And I love it about that. That's what I love. It's unabashedly. It's not trying to be anything else. This, Fever Dream, this EP is not trying to be anything else. It's like, I mean, and it's everything we talked about in the interview. It's just like he loves punk rock, and and loves, was heavily influenced back in the day by like all those fad and epitaph bands in the 90s. And what he's putting out now is amazing. And he doesn't do any more, but his old band Wake is also worth checking out. They're kind of in the same vein as this. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you like what he does as Joey Cobra, you're probably going to like what he did as Wake. And just really, really good. I mean, if you listen to that episode, I won't go too long on this one because, I mean, if you heard that episode or if you haven't, go back and check it out. We talk ad nauseum about the record and Joey's influences and our love for comps and punk and all that good stuff. But well worth checking out. His Bandcamp, go check it out on there. Like I said, he put out another EP since then that only came out like a day ago, so I've not gotten to hear it yet. But I'm sure it's great, so go grab that as well. But the songs to check out on this one are The Cost and Beating the System. Those I feel like those will give you a really good taste of what Joey is all about. Another really good one and a favorite of mine this year, Jeff Rosenstock with a surprise release, and he's very good at that. He did it with his last record too on New Year's Day 2018. He beat everyone to new music that year. But his new album, No Dream, that one got a surprise release on Polyvinyl Records back in May. And it's my favorite thing that he's put out in a while. I've liked the last few records, but We Cool is my favorite of his solo stuff. And I think this is probably my favorite since then. It's just really a fun album. There's that Jeff Rosenstock quirkiness on it. There's some there's lo-fi parts. And but even with lo-fi parts, I gotta say, production's really good on it. There's some songs that I really like the production on it, including like the drums, which sometimes on records can just sound like shit. They did really well on here, and really good sounding record. But there are parts of it where I'm like, you hear. I mean, the quirkiness of Jeff. You hear parts that I would definitely say kind of remind me back to like the Bomb the Music Industry days. And he does that so well where like he's writing and singing these songs about all the terrible things going on in this world, and very, very relevant to, I mean, really this year. I mean, perfect for this year, even though I don't think that he wrote it. It kind of got a surprise release, but I don't think it was like recorded or the songs were written really for what's going on. It just kind of got released during this time. But I mean, just extremely prevalent, as he is though. I mean, he really, including his last few solo ones, I would say has definitely gotten more political and just social issues and different things like that. And he just does it so well, I think, on the record. Like, he's very clever with how he does it, how he says things. And I mean, outside of that too, just introspective. Like, there's things he writes that are just, including on this record, that I just think, and one of my favorites on it, a song called Nikes. Like, you look at the lyrics, and like they're very self-critiquing. Like, he's being very hard on himself, but it's like it's very real, it's very raw, it's very honest. Like, I love that about it. I absolutely love it, and I've liked all his solo efforts, but this is the best one I would say since We Cool. I mean, it's the best one in 5 years, I would say. And really, honestly, too, like if you're not that familiar with Jeff, which I feel like if you listen to the show, you probably are. Like, I feel like he's pretty damn big in the scene. He's one of those guys where it's like mainstream. People may not know who he is, but if you listen to like punk and alternative or like college radio or anything like that, like, you probably know who Jeff Rosenstock is. But if for whatever reason you don't, I actually think this is a great like entry level record into his. I think it's one of his best records he's probably put out too, like ever. And I like Bomb the Music Industry, but I've never. It's funny because Bomb the Music Industry, like I like that band, but I can go through and I'll like listen to songs. I don't listen to like full albums. I'll listen to songs. Whereas with his solo stuff, I like it more, and I feel like it's something I can listen to a whole record of. You know, sometimes Bomb would just go places where like it's not that I minded it. It's just something that I'm like, I don't know that I want to hear 12 tracks of this per se. And I think you know what I mean. Sometimes there's things you listen to where you're like, okay, like 2 or 3 songs like this, or they're experimental or something I can listen to. But if you're going to give me 15 tracks of this, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that for me. But that's why I think this is a nice like mix of some of the best parts of Bomb. Really like the quirkiness of that band and some of just Jeff's sense of humor. And just really, really good. And his band that he has with him, Death Rosenstock, they always do a great job. But yeah, this one came out on polyvinyl. You know, as always, as with Jeff's mantra, which I give him huge credit. I mean, he has not abandoned it yet. Since the beginning of his career, everything he releases gets a pay what you want on quote unquote records, his record label website. So you can get it there, pay what you want. You can also get it on polyvinyl records. Might be on Bandcamp. All those different places, but I really do give him credit for doing the pay what you want or pay what you can, the whole donation based thing. Because I also think it gets people into it. Because once again, like I said, if you don't know Jeff Rosenstock and you're new to him, you can go grab this for free if you want. And it's like, and if you like what you hear, then you go back and you start, supporting him and stuff. But I mean, what a great entry level. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm telling you, like, what do you have to lose to go check out a No Dream? It's free. Go get the damn thing for free. And try it out. If you like it, go grab vinyl or something. But I love it. No Dream, one of the best of the year. I think one of his best solo records. And one of the best things he's just been part of. My favorite thing he's been part of, though, is Antarctigo Vespucci. That is my favorite Jeff Rosenstock thing, as well as Chris Farron thing. And I'm a big fan of Fake Problems, but I think that might even take the cake. Antarctigo, I think I like even more. Just a great band, and not that they've broken up or anything like that. They just do things kind of sporadically, and they're just great. They're so good. I got to see them what I think was their only full tour. I know they've played like Fest and stuff, but I think they only did one U.S. tour back in 2014, and I saw them on that. If it wasn't their only, it has to be one of their only ones, and had to definitely be the only time they ever played in Cleveland. They played at the Grog Shop, which shout out to them. And I'm going to have to look for the link. I'll find it and put in the show notes. But, it's another thing right now. You see all these venues talking about how they're on the brink of closing. And Grog Shop's one that I've seen mentioned quite a bit. And I do love, though, at the same time on social media, seeing so many of my favorite artists putting out tweets and stuff about the Save Our Stages for the Grog Shop and a bunch of other places, too. But like specifically putting things out, like we don't want to see the grog shop close. Like here's how you can support it. Here's how you can help it. And yeah, that would definitely be a very sad venue to lose. A really, really good one. And yeah, hopefully that one does not go away. I'll find the link for that too and put that in the show notes. You can go sign the thing for the letter to your Congress and wherever else that might go for. I believe it's for Save Our Stages. I don't know. I'm probably butchering the name. I don't have it in front of me, and then I'm like second guessing myself. So I'm probably fucking that name up. But just look at the show notes. The real link will be there. Whatever bullshit's coming out of my mouth right now, I don't remember the name of it. But yeah, I would hate to see Grog Shop go away and a lot of other great, dive bars and just little venues and stuff. I was saying this before. That's the scary thing is, the venues, obviously all venues are taking a hit right now. But if you're the Enron Arena, I really hope there's an Enron Arena still. That'd be hilarious. I'm going to buy an arena just to open up Enron Arena. And then across the street, I'm going to open up another one. It'll be Circuit City Arena. And then another one, and that'll be Game Crazy / Hollywood Video Arena. And it'll just continue down the line from there. But anyway, that's the thing, like, arenas and like houses of House of Blues and like bigger like the Fillmores and things like that and Live Nation owned venues, those will be able to survive. Obviously they're taking a financial hit right now, not being able to be open, but they will reopen. Like, rest assured, those probably aren't going anywhere. I really don't see that happening. The ones that are going to take a hit and close down are the venues that you go see most of the bands that I play on this show and talk about and interview as well. Most of these people who I have on the show aren't playing arenas and stuff like that. They are playing the Grog Shop or, no matter where you're at. Insert your favorite dive bar or, small punk club, wherever you live, insert there and, it'd just be a damn shame to lose them. So, yeah. And, also hit me up. Because I want to spread the word on that stuff. If you, even venues from wherever you're from, if there's like donation things or there's like something to spread the word to like help support them, hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. And, like on a future episode here, I'll get on here and kind of, help spread the word to like, hey, go here and sign this or, this thing is for sale and help support this venue. Cause yeah, it would blow to come out of this. People are like, we miss live music. And it's like, it will really suck when you get out of this and there's nowhere to see half those bands. If you're a huge band, there'll be venues to go play. But, if you were playing a 400 cap place somewhere and all those closed down, where are you going to play? Which also I talked about a few episodes ago is why I think house shows are going to become huge, as well as just unconventional venues as well. Just weird ass places to see a show. Like the weirdest place you can imagine, you might see a show there. Just unconventional places because there aren't places to play. And I think those are going to become even more prevalent. I think we're going to see a lot more house shows and stuff. Obviously not right now. I don't know how many people are dying to get in someone's crowded basement at the moment. But I just mean in a post-COVID world, if God forbid, though everyone talks about it, if all these small venues close down, I see that being the future, at least until we get something in the wake of, all the ones that close down. But yeah, moving on to a more of a positive note, speaking of more good music this year, Wildlife, really good band. Another one who I'd never heard of up until the release of this one. I know they have a couple things before this, but their new album, Year of the Snake, this came out back in April, and just some good rock and roll. Just one of those bands who really like there's some replacements in there. There's just some straight up rock bands like, your Rolling Stones, your David Bowie. You got some Johnny Thunders in there. I would say some Exploding Hearts. There's some punk in there. There's some songs too where I just go are really nice, like almost poppy, not straight up pop songs, but like poppy, catchy songs. Like they can write a hook and just a really, really good rock band. And their videos are goddamn hilarious. You go on YouTube, go find Wildlife, and they're spelled Wildlife, and they have some hilarious music videos. They're up there. Them and another band who actually released some new music this year is really good. The Chats a band from Australia. They're another one who, as far, music videos, you're not seeing them as much now. People put out lyric videos and stuff more than anything, or you get like the live montage and stuff. There's just not money. Really, ever since money got out of music and bands aren't on like major labels anymore, you're really not seeing music videos. There's just not budgets for them. But there's a few people out there still making really good ones, and the Wildlife and the Chats are I would say up there as like probably some of the best music videos of this year. But they also have some funny ones from before that. Both of them are very creative with probably little budgets, and very cool to see. But Year of the Snake, great release. Go check that out. The songs off that, Automatic, which I got to say, this song, it's funny. This song really doesn't sound like the rest of the record. This song is probably like the most poppy, quote-unquote poppy song on the record. But I think it should be huge. Like, I hear it, like the chorus to me is massive, and I could hear it on radio, like commercial radio, like top 40 radio, rock radio, alternative radio, college radio. Like, it's just one of those songs that I think kind of like an REM, kind of in that way. A huge compliment I got to give Wildlife. Not that they sound like REM, but that crossover. We have a band like REM who kind of pleased all those audiences I just talked about. It's like, they were played on college radio, and they're also a band that you hear on top 40 radio. To this day, I would say you probably still hear like IRS era REM on college radio, and then you hear the huge shit on top 40 radio. You hear it on every kind of station, basically. Like any station I've worked for before, no matter what like format or genre, there's probably an REM song in there. And Automatic for Wildlife is one of those songs I think could just be like, anyone listens to that, I think would love it. And Deathbed, great opener for the album, like really just sets the mood for the record. I love it. And Kiss and Tell, which speaking of their music videos, there's a music video for that one, and it's hilarious. Go check it out. But go check out Wildlife, Year of the Snake. You'll not regret it. One of my favorite records of this year. I mean, this one probably is my favorite, unless something else comes out and knocks it over. I don't think I've listened to another record more this year. But The Strokes, The New Abnormal, this one came out back in April. And this one is kind of like Newfound Glory was for me. Like, I was not expecting a lot. Like, I'm just being honest. And I was never a big Strokes fan. The last few years, I've turned around. I really like Is This It? And Room on Fire. I've gotten more into the other records more, but I'm kind of like a lot of other people where first two records, really good front to back, flawless. I listen to them constantly front to back. After that, I start picking and choosing. Like half of First Impressions of Earth, I really like. There's a couple songs on Angles that I like, probably like 3 or 4. Come Down Machine, there's a few on there that I like. But The New Abnormal goes right back to the first two records. I listen to this damn thing front to back like every time. Like every time I put it on, there's never like I just don't skip anything. There's nothing to skip. It's all good. And that's just one of those things you can't say for every record. And not only I was gonna listen to it, like I knew it was coming out. Obviously, I was gonna listen to it. But I wasn't expecting a lot. I just wasn't. I was like, okay. And then At the Door came out. That was the first single, and I wasn't sold on it. It was all right, but I didn't. It was like, it really wasn't like that classic Strokes sound. It was very synth heavy, kind of slow tempo. And I don't hate the song. I also don't think it's the strongest track on the record though. And, so after hearing that, I was like, all right, well, I'll check the rest out, but I'm not sure. And, no, I was totally wrong. They came out with what ended up being, it's my favorite record of the year by far, and, just absolutely killing it. And even I'll say this too, even off first listen, I wasn't entirely sold. I liked it enough. And there were a couple songs that stood out where I'm like, all right, these are really good. But it was just one of those records, and quite honestly, most of my favorite records this way, I liked it just enough at first, and normally it starts that way where it's like I'm almost indifferent. Like if I fucking hate it the first time, I'm probably not ever gonna like it. Like I don't know that I turn around so much where I'm like, this album's bullshit, and then the second time I listen, I'm like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. But normally what will happen is I might be indifferent of a record, or like I like 1 or 2 songs kind of stick out. And then I listen more, and then I come around to it. And I'm like, oh, okay, like it just took me time to kind of warm up to. And this is one of those records for me. But since doing so, though, I mean, truthfully, it's so good front to back. It's 9 songs, and all 9 songs are just really, really good. There's songs on there that kind of have that old school Strokes sound, and there's other songs where like they do stuff I've never really heard them do before. And they do it really, really well. I mean, there's stuff on here where you're like, wow, like that's and it's not too. I mean, the thing with the Strokes, I mean, I feel like they experiment a decent amount. I don't feel like they're ever a band where you're too surprised when they do something different, you know. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think there are bands you normally kind of assume are going to kind of do something different on each record. And the things that they did on here, I think really ended up working out really well. And the other thing too, working with Rick Rubin, he got something out of them. I mean, once again, talking about production, and I don't think that the Strokes ever self-produced a record. Not that I'm aware of. I don't think that they have. But just having the right producer, and that's what Rick Rubin was. Like, you can obviously tell, like the last few records have okay songs on them, but it's just not that band who's firing all cylinders. And Rick Rubin got that shit out of him. I don't know how he did it, but he got it out of them. I mean, and it's a great sounding record too. It's a, you know, sonically, he did a great job on it. I mean, obviously he's a legend. You know, it's not like I need to tell you that Rick Rubin knows how to produce a record, but you know, I am telling you he did a very good job on this one. And yeah, I mean, unless something comes up and dethrones this, I would say is my favorite record. I mean, I have my top 3, but this is number 1. This sits at number 1. So go check out the Strokes, The New Abnormal, if you haven't yet. And I would say the ones to check out, Not the Same Anymore. That one kind of has an old school Strokes vibe too. When it breaks in, I go, oh, like that's like it's the parts of the Strokes that remind you why you liked them in the first place. Bad Decisions, I mean, that was their second single. You've probably heard that one. It's the one that sounds like Dancing With Myself and Melt With You, but it's really, really good. And Ode to the Mets, which they just put out a music video for, that is a really solid one, a really good album closer as well. So go check them out. Another great record that came out this year, I got a couple more for you. Ultimate Fake Book, The Preserving Machine. This one came out back in April. And Ultimate Fake Book, like, I loved this. Like, I knew who they were, and that was the whole reason I checked it out, actually, was I was looking at some radio promo. Shout out to Pirate, a very great radio promo site. Very, very good people who, I got to say, too, I mean, there's bands that I've shared on the show or on this here podcast that I discovered through them. So, you know, shout out to them. There's a lot of bands who maybe you discovered through me who I wouldn't have discovered without them. And they have a great team over there. They're always very rad. But anyways, I was on there and I saw the name and I'm like, oh, I know Ultimate Fake Book. Like, I know of them. I also know they're up my alley. It's a band that I've just never, like, listened to. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those bands where it's like I never had checked them out. I probably had heard a song or two, but I never went and checked out. But I knew that they were, like, in the scene, you know, like bands that I like. Like, I knew that they fit with my taste. So I'm like, all right, I'll check this out. And, you know, I really wasn't sure what to expect. I also didn't think that they'd put anything out in a while, and I was right about that. I was like, I didn't really think they were a band. Actually, I didn't know they were a band at that point. So I was like, oh, wow, like they got a new record out and stuff. Like, all right, I'll give this a listen. And, I mean, talking about just blowing me away, like the highest compliment I got to give it is exactly that a band that has been together now for 20-something years, I don't know what year they started, but like mid-90s, I would say, and mid to late 90s. I mean, at bare minimum, that band has been around for 20 plus years. I will say that. And, you know, for being a band who's been around now for that many decades, this is my first taste of them, and it made me a fan. Like, that's a good sign. You know what I mean? Like, because you can write an album this far in, and you may be appeasing fans. It may be a thing where people who, you know, liked you 15 years ago like this record because it reminds them of like that or something. You know, there's a lot of bands who have had that. You know, that's what I'm talking about with the Reunion record. That can sometimes like backfire, and Reunion records can fucking suck. And then other times they can be great. And that's what the Preserving Machine is. I mean, they went in, and for someone like me with no preconceived notions, I didn't really, you know, I knew they were a band who I was probably going to like and that it would probably be music that I liked. Like, I knew that much. Like, I'm like, all right, this isn't going to be something totally out of my wheelhouse, but still no preconceived notions. I didn't know really what to expect, and they just blew me away. I mean, the energy, very high energy on this record. I know Motion City Soundtrack were promoting it on their social media when it came out and saying some very nice things about them. And I totally get it. Like, you speaking of that, like listening to them now, I'm like, oh yeah, like I totally hear this. I'm like, this is like early Motion City Soundtrack, kind of like that. Like this, like it's power pop, it's pop punk. I mean, they name drop Super Drag on their record, so you also know that that's how they got me too. Like on track 2 there, they name drop Super Drag, and the second they did that, I'm like, all right, this record is just like already, like I was smile on my face. I'm like, the first 2 songs are already good, but you're gonna name drop that. It's like, all right, I'm a fan. Like you have me. Like, I'm on board. Like I don't need much else convincing. Like, this is good, and it really is. I mean, and since then too, I went back and listened to some of their older stuff there. And I mean, I think older fans will be pleased with it. Like, I think they came back and did something really solid, but it stands on its own. You know, it's not something that you have to be a fan of the band already to like. Like, if you don't know Ultimate Fake Book, go check this out and you'll probably like it. And if you're a fan of Ultimate Fake Book, go check it out, because I definitely think you're going to like it. You know, knowing now what what their sound is, kind of the signature sound and whatnot of them, they killed it on this. They absolutely did what they do best. And it's just really, really good. Just very high energy. I also like it. There's kind of a nostalgic vibe lyrically on it. There's a lot of like singing about like kind of the good old days, but not in like a sad like drink and talk about the glory days. Not like that at all. But just there's certain songs on there, like one of the best ones, one of the ones you want to go check out, like After Hours at Moline's. That's the one that name drop Super Drag. But it just kind of seems like it's a love letter to those, like, you know, hanging out with your friends late at night, you know, after shows or in college or whenever, you know what I mean? Kind of those timeless things. There's just like, you listen to that and it's like, it just makes you think of your own, like, you know, the times of hanging out after shows with friends till 5 a.m., you know, or doing stupid shit or whatever, like, you know, just kind of that stuff. Like, you get that vibe on the record quite a bit, kind of like the looking back on your life kind of, and the good things too. It's the other thing, is like a positive thing, not like a where'd the time go, like we're you know, like not like that, but more like oh yeah, like we've had some good fucking times. More like a fun thing, like we've had good times and we're gonna keep having good times. And you know, I don't know, kind of a, not like it's an album that's just oozing with positivity, not like it's like a self-help record or anything like that. You know, I don't want to paint it in the wrong picture, but you do listen to it and it's like, I also just think the energy of it, the high, kind of high like voltage energy of the, you know, music, and really what they're doing as a trio too. I mean, that was the other thing, is I couldn't believe they're a trio. I didn't realize that. I assumed they had at least 2 guitar players, and they don't. Their frontman Bill McShane there is the only guitar player, and it is impressive what 3 people are doing on there. But yeah, I mean, like everything about it is just kind of, it puts you in a good mood. I would put it there like with Newfound Glory. Like, you put on that Newfound Glory record and it's just, it puts you in a good mood. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of nice sunny day music. You know, like this is another good, like, I'd say the Preserving Machine is definitely a good summertime record. And we should, you know, actually, it may even be next week, if not next week, sometime soon. But Bill McShane is going to be coming on the show, and I've been meaning to have him on. I mean, this record came out back in April, and I've been wanting to have him on since it came out. I remember. The funny thing is, though, I had other guests as well, you know, just booked up. So, you know, it took a while. I was gonna go get a hold of them. And like right a couple weeks after that record came out, and sorry, I'm like losing my voice here. On air for you, as you can hear it puttering out. Let me get some water here. Sorry about that, and I won't cut that shit out. This is real and raw, man. But anyway, you know, we should have Bill on here very soon, talk about the record. And yeah, I was gonna hit him up back when this came out, and like a couple weeks after it came out. I got in a little accident with my vehicle. Then I have a car, so I was going through shit with that, trying to get that figured out, and just doing different things. Life got in the way, is what I'm saying. And booking an interview was kind of the last on my list, so it kind of got on the back burner. And thankfully, I have undone my kind of forgetfulness. I'm like, oh yeah, like I forgot, like I gotta have him on. I'm listening to that record one day, going, yeah, I love this. Like, why have I not hit Bill up yet? And very, very nice guy, very cool. I've been messaging him on Facebook. Very, very cool dude. And should be on here. If it's not next week, it will be very, very soon. And I'm excited for that because Ultimate Fake Book, The Preserving Machine, one of my favorites this year. Go check out Manhattan, Kansas. Probably my favorite song on the record. Just the energy of it is just, I mean, probably the highest energy on the record. I love that song. After Hours at Moline's. It's a great song. There's a great music video they put out for it. It's hilarious. And, they name drop Super Drag in it, so you know it's good. And we're sharing the same dream tonight, another solid one. The whole record's great, though. And another one, last but not least on my list. I mean, there's so many other good releases, but just looking at my list here, my last one, and one of my favorites. This is, talking about my top 3 records of 2020 so far, obviously, and I'm very excited that we still have here like 6 more months of music to be put out. But the Bomb Pops with Death in Venice Beach. This one is in my top 3. I mean, my top 3 favorites of this year, the Suicide Machines Revolution Spring, the Strokes, The New Abnormal, and the Bomb Pops Death in Venice Beach. This one is just so good. The Bomb Pops the last few years, I mean, it's funny because I still think of them as like a really, really new band. I really do, yet they've been together since like 2009 or 2010, I think they started. So I mean, they've been a band for over a decade at this point. But I feel like they kind of became, not that they weren't a serious band prior to it, but I just feel like in 2017 when they put Fear of Missing Out on Fat Records, it really was just the start of something for them. Like, it was really them finding their voice as a band, finding their sound. They put out a few releases before that, just EPs, I believe, no full lengths. But they put out a few EPs on Red Scare Industries, and they're not bad at all. But I feel like the last few records have been them finding their own sound, like being a great, just kind of pop punk band, but doing, finding the parts of them that make them unique and make them the Bomb Pops, not just a band that sounds like another Fat Records band, like something like that. They've really found it. And Fear of Missing Out was really good. Then they put out the Dear Beer EP in 2018, and that blew me away even more. Like, I was like, I already liked Fear of Missing Out, but once I heard Dear Beer, I was like, this is a good sign of things to come. It's one of those EPs. I like when bands will sometimes put out an EP in between albums where it makes you even more excited for the following record, because it's like, if this is what they're doing in like 2 or 3 songs, like, I cannot wait. I cannot wait at all. Like, there's been some where you get those. The Movie Life is one of those. Like, Movie Life Has a Gambling Problem is one of those for me, where it's like, I listen to that and I'm just like, what a great one to have in between. It's kind of like, if you liked what we did on this last one, here's a taste of what's to come, kind of thing. And even though it's funny, because then they kind of changed it up on 40-Hour Train. I wouldn't say that it straight up sounds like that, but it's just another one where it's like that EP foreshadowed, the good things to come out of the Movie Life, what they're releasing next. Kind of like a taste of like, hey, we're on to something else. Like, we're not just going to put out, this time next year, part 2. Same with the Bomb Pops. Like, when I heard Dear Beer, I'm like, oh, they're not just going to put out Fear of Missing Out part 2 when they put something else out. And they didn't. They went in and pushed themselves and just really, have put themselves at the forefront as the best new, like, as far as like the new school of Fat Records bands of, whatever you really want to consider, I'd say of the last decade, like of the 2010s, they've put themselves up there as one of the best ones, like hands down. Like, really a band that when I think of Fat Records, I think of them. When I think of like the modern bands and stuff, obviously you have like your NoFX and Lagwagons and, like Strung Out. It's just bands that have been on there since the very beginning. But like, if I'm thinking of new bands, the ones I associate, Bomb Pop is the first one that goes in my head. and they outdid themselves with Death in Venice Beach, and it's just no nonsense like pop punk. It's, a lot of times it is nice, fun, simple 3-chord pop punk. And, there's a nice mix in there. What I like, too, is they've always been good at writing, like, summertime jams. Like, on all their releases, they're full of them. They're full of songs that, you want to listen to with the windows down, just driving on a sunny day. I remember, actually, when Dear Beer came out, and the title track, I guess, is kind of a sadder one. That's not as much as, like, driving around with the windows down. There's a few songs on there. I remember when it came out, I was at a cousin's wedding in Maui, so we flew over to Maui with some family, and just listening to that in the rental car that we had. I remember one night I had the car to myself. It was just cruising around Maui, and like that was just perfect for it. That EP, just like the Bomb Pops, just have songs that are like, it's fucking nice out. It's, July. I have the windows down, my arm out the window. I got, this is the music that was made for days like that. Very much like West Coast. Like you can tell they're a West Coast band because they sound like it. You know what I mean? They sound like they come from sunny, like Southern California. But the other thing I like too is there's other songs on here, just like their other releases. Like I said, like with Dear Beer, where it's like, that song's kind of a downer as well. Not in a bad way, but it's like, obviously you listen, including like the chorus of it, it's like they're not the most uplifting lyrics, but that's what I like about them is they have both. There's the songs that you want to listen to with your window down, or you're driving on a sunny day. So the songs you want to listen to while you're pissed off, alone somewhere, in your headphones, out for a walk or something, out in your room at night, or whatever it is. There's kind of range on there. And I like it. There's definitely a few songs on this new one too, kind of more like punk rock jams and like minor. So they kind of sound like they kind of do like more like a Bad Religion style, and I love it. I mean, I love this record. It's a fun one. I think it's the best thing they've put out yet. It's just very strong. It's a very strong release, and it's one of those things where it's like I love bands like this because Fat Records is really one of the few labels left where I just trust them when they put something out. And that was kind of like the case of the Bomb Pops a few years ago. I mean, I just kind of checked them out because they were on Fat Records, and I'm like, well, it's probably good. And then I checked it out. I'm like, oh yeah, they never steer me wrong. Like Fat Records, like there's a reason they, Fat Mike signed them, and it's like he knows good punk rock and pop punk, and that's what you get with the Bomb Pops. It's no nonsense, and it's just really, really good. And like I said, in my top 3 favorite records released of the year so far. But best songs on it to go check out would be Radio Silence, Notre Dame. That you've probably heard that one. There's a music video for it, and was the first single off of there, and one of the best songs on it. Absolutely. I don't want to say it in the sense that it sounds like them ripping off Alkaline Trio, but it has that darkness to it. They're like lyrically and musically, there's an Alkaline Trio vibe that I really like. They do it in a way where it's the Bomb Pops doing Alkaline Trio, not just a band ripping them off. If that makes sense. And also 13 Stories Down. I mean, just so great. I love this band. If you've never checked them out, you gotta check them out. They a lot of it too like reminds me. I would definitely say, including like on Dear Beer, if you want to go back and check out that EP too. Like that EP reminds me of like Take Off Your Pants and Jacket era Blink-182. I'm kind of like, it's like that, which, that I love that record. So, I mean, once again, I mean that in like the highest compliment possible. But, yeah, I absolutely love that. I love the Bomb Pops and Fat Records. I mean, just they knocked it out of the park when they signed them a few years ago. I'm definitely excited to see where they go next. Because that's the thing, even though they've been around for like 10 years, it's really like the last 3 or 4 that I feel like they've kind of seriously came into their own. So, I think we're really just seeing the beginning of what the Bomb Pops are capable of. But yeah, like I said, I mean, that's just a condensed list. There's been a shit ton of releases this year. I mean, I didn't really get into singles or live albums, acoustic albums, like all that stuff. But I mean, I kind of threw Archers of the Loaf on here, but you have to, because that's Archers of the Loaf, and hopefully we get a full length sometime from them. Maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe they'll just be like, fuck it, quarantine. We didn't have time to do anything else, so we just went in and recorded this record. Here you go. Because at this point, I think it'd be pretty good. If it's anything like the singles they've released, I think we would get a damn good Arches of the Loaf record in 2020. They're not a band that I fear. That's not a band that I'm afraid of releasing a stinkeroo. I don't think it'll happen. I think if they put out a record, it would be a good one. But yeah, so that's my list. Like I said, I'm going to make a playlist, a Spotify playlist with all those songs that I said to go listen to. They'll all be in one place on the Power Chord Hour Spotify. And if you'd be so cool, you can follow us on there. So if you'd follow that page, I put up playlists every week from the radio show as well, so you can check out everything I'm playing on the show and kind of keep your ear to the ground. You know, I play a lot of old stuff, but I obviously play tons of new stuff too. Got to keep you in the know for all the great punk and alternative coming out. But check that out. Stay connected with the show. We're at Power Chord Hour on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And right now we're doing, if you go leave the Power Chord Hour, a rate and review us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, any of those places. Send me a screenshot, powerchordhour@gmail.com, as well as our social media. I mean, you can always just DM it to me there. Basically anywhere we're at. But hit me up with a screenshot of your review, and I will send you a Power Chord Hour t-shirt, as well as some stickers and guitar picks. Absolutely free. I'll send you a little Power Chord Hour care package as a thank you for rating the show. We're still new. We're 31 episodes in, still fairly new. And, some reviews would help. Apparently, I believe that's how you get, like, on charts and shit. Like really, to be honest, if it, like, I want to get the word out on the show, so it helps with that. Like, if it didn't do anything like that, I wouldn't be so pushy on it, because I'm always like, God damn, everyone's, like, rate and subscribe in this. But, I guess it's a necessary thing. But I'll sweeten the deal. You know what I mean? I won't just be an asshole asking you to rate his podcast. I'll be an asshole who asks you to go rate his podcast, and then I'll give you something in return. You know what I mean? So yeah, go do that if you'd be so rad. And thank you very much to the people who have. We've gotten a few so far, and I've sent some shirts out. Even sent one over to the UK, which was kind of cool. But I will actually say, though, I sent one to the UK. But I got to do this U.S. only because it is over $20 to ship a T-shirt. I found out to the U.K. So my apologies, but U.K. and Canada. I'm sorry. God damn. The U.S. and Canada only for now. I apologize to that. I wish shipping was cheaper other places. But until it's not $20-something to ship you a T-shirt, I'm going to have to keep it to where it will cost me like $4 to mail you a T-shirt. So, yeah, U.S. and Canada, hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. Send me a screenshot of your rate and review of the show. And, yeah, that's going to be the show for this week. Like I said, next week we may be back with Bill McShane of Ultimate Fake Book. If not next week, should be very soon. But until then, either way, I'll be back next week with you. And as always, a radio show too every Friday night on 107.9 WRFA in Jamestown, New York. We'll have a new one for you this weekend. And but yeah, that is it. So for the Power Chord Hour, I'm Anthony Merchant, and thanks for listening.